let's do. All right, let's begin with the tic-tac-toe game. It's not too bad. It's only like 59 lines. That's nothing. But if you want to look at the tic-tac-toe game, you have a print board. That's a function. Oh, yeah. You can. There you go. In PyCharm, you could like kind of clear out the code if you don't want to stare at it. But this is the tic-tac-toe game. You have a board variable, which is a list of lists. It's a 2D list. And you have multiple functions. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 functions, and then I just call play. So play is not really necessary, but I just like to have everything in functions. And this is the code that's actually like outside of a function. This is the only bit of code that is what is this doing? This is the only kind of code that is not like, for example, it's the only kind of code that is this, or in the global scope, I guess you could say, kind of. No, the only code that's not inside of a function, and also the board itself. So there you go. Why don't we begin with this why don't we begin with programming this game? So I'll create a new project, and we can reference the old one as we go along. Alright, cool. You know what? No, we don't need a new project. We'll just create a new file in here. Alright, if you guys haven't seen this before, I think I showed it to you before. It's just super simple game. Oh, sorry, running the wrong one. Here we go. It's a super simple game. You have a really super like basic board printout, and you have just these inputs. One, you put in 2 like coordinate points basically that correspond to a certain board position, and it places things there. And it doesn't really need to be more complex because it's tic-tac-toe, and who cares? You can make it more complex, but at the end of the day, it's just a game, and we're just using it as a learning experience. Alright, cool. So why don't we stop this and we can begin. So first of all, you're gonna want something to hold the board and each of the variables inside the board. As you can see here, it's a list. So we're gonna create a board variable, set that to a list, and inside of this list we're gonna put other lists, because although you can do just like a one large list with 9 values inside of it, 9 elements inside of it for each, it's just easier to do it. Have like one list for the first row, one list for the second row, one list for the third row. It's 2D because we have a 2D board, so we're gonna have a 2D list. Make it simple, and we're gonna set this list initially to, I believe, yeah, just spaces. So it's pretty simple. And once you have one of them, you can copy and paste. You could either keep it like this, but it's a board, so we'll put it in the board to look like an actual board. Alright, terrific. Now we have a board, and we can print the board actually. Oh, wrong one. Run this, and it prints out a list with spaces in the variables, the elements, because we haven't assigned it to anything yet. Alright, so does that make sense for everyone? The list inside of a list, 2D list. Yes? Anything in the...
Like, you explained like what each list represents, right?
Yeah, it's the row. Each
Okay.
row of the board. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of thought it's just gonna hold the values we have. Alright, let's move on to the print board function. So we need to print we need to print each when you are playing this game. We need to print each value, and like we need to print the board out each time we're gonna have another input, because if you don't know what's on the board, then you can't play the game. Okay. So we'll have a new function called def print board, print underscore board. And yeah, you can put like, I guess if you have multiple boards, you can have board in here, but right now we're not going to worry about that. All we're going to do is check out the board above. Alright, so what we're going to need is we're going to need a numbering system, right? We need to have, oops, my bad. We need to have these numbers here if we want to, if you want to have your players know what to, like what place they're going to be placing their thing. We don't have, there's no buttons, so you need to have like some kind of coordinate system. So this is spaced properly, and you can like play around with it, but I already know this is spaced properly. So for the first, let's say like row of it, like not row, but for the first line of the like kind of game, you're gonna have just some spaces. These are just spaces, and then 1, 2, 3, and I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, 4 spaces in between each of these variables, or each just numbers. And if you want it to be like, if you want, you can start with 0 too, or like 0, 1, 2 if you want to be all programming savvy, but because it's 0 indexed. But we're just gonna do regular numbers because we're humans and we start at 1. Okay, terrific. Now we need a for loop to loop through each of the lists inside this board list, and then print those out too. So we're gonna do for list in, or let's use better variable names for row, because we're gonna be printing out each row. For row in board, and what this does is it doesn't go into the individual lists. It just treats each row as one of the elements inside the larger list, because that's what it is. And it prints out the entire list just like that. Prints out the entire list. It doesn't go into each individual one. Well, it like doesn't. You don't need to do that, basically, is what I'm saying. For row in board, and then you can just do print row. Alright, let's run this. Oh, we didn't call it. My bad. Print board. Okay. Alright, there you go. So you kind of got a board, right? But you don't have the coordinate system, the coordinates for the rows. You only have the coordinates for the columns. That's not useful. So what you can do is you can either have a counter variable that you initially set to 1, and then inside the for loop you just add 1 to each time. So for example, you have a counter, and we use counters all the time in programming because they're super useful. Counter, you can set that to 1 initially because that's what we want, and then like you're gonna be printing the counter, and then you're gonna add 1 to the counter. There you go. And that, oh, you know what? That doesn't do it properly. Here. So what you would need to do is you wouldn't print them on the same line. You get rid of this one and you put a comma, and that will print both elements. So there you go. Now we have a board. What I did before is, if you like want to continue and be smart, and I mean not be smart, but you want to be more elegant with your code, let's say, but perhaps a little more confusing with your code, you can use a function, a pre-built function called Enumerate, which what it does is it poops out 2 values, it poops out a count and then a row. So it will give instead of just having one element that it returns and then is assigned to, say, row, it's going to return two values. And if you remember in Python, you can do this because you can like assign x, y gets 5, 4, 5, right? That's perfectly fine. You can do that in Python. You can assign as many variables as you want in just one line. And essentially, that's what enumerate is doing. It returns two values, and the first value is being assigned to count, the second value is assigned to row. And what enumerate does is it just acts as a counter. So it returns, I have it set to 1 initially because we want to do 1, 2, 3, but if you don't have anything here, okay, so if you don't want to have anything here, you can have it like that, and it's going to return 0 to count. But we set it to 1 initially because we want to count 1, 2, 3 instead of 0, 1, 2. All right, so this is the easy way to do it, and I'll show you the other way to do it. So for you're going to want two variables here. We'll get rid of this. All right. So you're going to want two variables for count and row, just like before, except they're both inside the for loop now. For count row and then you do enumerate whatever you want to enumerate over, which in this case is board. And then you could set, this is the start integer, and it says right here, whatever, like we can start at 3. And then if you run this, oh, my bad. Print row, I didn't print it out. Print count row. Alright, and this needs a colon. So if you look down here, we get 3, 4, 5. But that's super confusing, and we want to keep it the same as before, so we'll just start at 1. By the way, if there wasn't anything here, it just goes 0, 1, 2. So we're gonna start 1, and there you go. You got your board printed out. And if you add variables into here, right now you can add whatever you want. And this is gonna totally mess up the format, but it's gonna print it out. So you have now you can actually play tic-tac-toe and know what's going on without having to guess where everything is and remember everything. So that's super useful.